and make a layer for each of your object types. Eventually, you'll be really happy you did. If you don't do it, eventually you'll have to do it, and you'll get really confused and mad when you're trying to select things, and you'll just have to stop and fix it. At least that's what happens to me. Right, so photo slider. The object that is currently selected is showing up in the guides layer. Do you see that blue dot? That blue dot means that that photo is not in the photo slider layer that I just made, because the photo slider layer didn't exist. So because there's nothing else selected in that layer, if I click on this blue dot and move it up, it is now in its own layer. And I would likely put all photo slider elements in that folder if there's multiples, or in that layer. I'm clicking away to make sure nothing is selected, and the next thing I'm going to put here is text. And they'll only have things that are text for the main part of the page. Adding 2 more layers, I'm going to call this one navigation, and then the one below it logo. If anything in the logo layer is going to overlap the navigation, it should be above it. So let's make it above it, okay? And then I'll save again. For the next part of this, I'm going to just use boxes. I'm going to create one more layer just for image boxes. And the image boxes will become other things. But I'm actually going to start with myself selected on this new layer called image boxes. And with the image boxes layer selected, I'm going to fill my rectangle before I draw it. So I select the rectangle tool and make this the color I want it to be. And I'm going to go ahead and make an image box that's going to go across 2 columns. And then I'm going to need a 50 by 50 pixel box for my margin. I'm going to zoom in, Z for zoom, click and drag, move tool, or selection tool, lay this out, and zoom out. I could make this into a guide now. If I'm going to do that, I should probably move this to the guide layer, clunk, okay? And that's the only thing that's selected, so I'll go View, Guide, Make Guide, yeehaw, and click away, and lock that layer again. And now the next photo box, I'm going to duplicate the first one using either copy and paste in front or option drag. So now I know that these are spaced with the proper margins. Starting to make sense, right? So you're making up some rules based on the feel for it. You start going in a direction, and then you quickly create some structure that has some logic to it. And then you continue to fill in the contents. So it is helpful to me a lot of the time not to do gray boxes. And I make these designs for clients using the same techniques I'm showing you here. So I'm going to select both of these boxes, and I'm actually going to move them to the guides layer. So I have to unlock, drag this down. So I'm essentially building the wireframe based on my sketch, and then turning the wireframe into the layout at the same time. I could show the client just the wireframe, take screenshots, do a number of different things with hiding and showing the different layers to get them ideas of what might be possible. By keeping things organized, it will make it a lot easier for you to do that. So again, here I'm going to go to View and Guides and make Guides again and unlock Guides. All right, so for creating little header elements, let's say there is some header content that goes across here, naming these like trends and our team picks. Creating button text and creating header text has some logic behind it. In general, what you want to try to do is Design for the largest thing possible. So if you're trying to figure out the size of a button text, you want to think about what is the largest word, lay out the largest word. If you're then happy with the way the largest word looks, use those same settings to make all the rest of the words. It should fit the way you want it to. Same thing goes for headlines or subheads or headers. So that's what I'm going to look at now, is how I might want to design the header pieces in Illustrator for these two asymmetrical columns. In Illustrator, I'm going to use the rounded rectangle box. And make sure that my image boxes layer is selected. I'm going to click and drag out my rounded rectangle box. And I'm going to copy it, Command C. I want it to be a color, but I don't want it to be this color. I will make it a pale yellow. So the color information that your coder will use is this. This is the hexadecimal value of this color. This is how this yellow color is described in code. Don't want that color, but here's the color: F9, F4, A0. Do you have to like be really concerned about that right now? Not really, but you should know it's there. All right, and then if you recall a moment ago, I copied the gray box. I'm going to paste it in front of the yellow one, paste in front. And then I'm going to cut this. And I will cut it using another rectangle. So I want the header to come to about 50 pixels tall. So if I unlock my guide layer and I click on my 50 pixel box and relock it, I'm going to use a rectangle on the image boxes layer to trim this other rectangle. So the rectangle I just made is on top, and this gray one is beneath it. There is a wonderful thing in Illustrator called the pathfinders, and the pathfinders allow you to make shapes out of other shapes. I'm going to use this pathfinder called -front to subtract the purple box from the gray one, and so now my header fits perfectly on top of my yellow box. It is somewhat a aesthetic choice and also a subjective choice of whether you want boxes to go to the edge or to have margins. I'm more of a margin person, but if you look around, you'll see a lot of not margined sites where content just bleeds to the edge. So I personally would be more likely in my design values to make a shift to this thumbnail or this wireframe by moving this or duplicating the guide box over to this side as well, and making sure that, now that's locked again, that my content fits. One of the things I want to encourage you guys to do is to be, bless you, mindful of detail, small detail. Okay, is this making sense so far? Is this good? All right, so I'm going to save this file. For the yellow box here and for this gray box, I'm going to use some colors already in the photo. So I'm selecting the gray box and using the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to pull a gray or a brown or some color right from the photo. Okay, that's lovely, but that's not what I wanted to do. Let's click away just that little rectangle. There we go. I'll use the eyedropper tool, I for eyedropper. There it is. And here I'll grab this other gray color. There, it's like a warm gray color. And same thing here, I'll click on this yellow box, zoom out a little this time, and I want to pick up a color from this artwork just as something to show you. And there's that. Sometimes color can be very deceiving, like you think something's one color and it's not that color at all. Even this bright light tan color. So in that case, I'll be like, I need to change that color immediately, and then eyeball the color to something I could deal with like that. Okay. Some of the processes of doing this work when I'm sharing this with you require me to use both sides of my mind at the same time. And that's why I talk really slow, because I'm trying to design something that's not ugly while I tell you how to design it. So my left brain and my right brain are like at war. It's like rock'em sock'em robots. You know, if I didn't talk, I could probably design it better. But again, you might want one side to bleed. That might be a nice feature where this is news or features different things. But if you want that, you can always go back, unlock the guides layer, click the guides layer, option click, 50, tab 50. So I'm building my grid as I go. And again, I'll give this an outline and move this box over to here. And then set it view, guides, make guide, and lock. Boom. So now I can see the true size of the next box. At some point, I can hide the guides layer and get a really nice idea of what's going to happen here. So that looks hella better. Right? So continue to make the boxes and put the stuff in. All right, so let's talk about text. Now that you have an idea how to make these different sections, I would set up yourself a set of paragraph and or character style. So we'll do that in the next recording.